Blackness, taste of salt, swollen tongue and aching limbs. I feel so weak. Feels like when you stand up too fast and the blood still hasn't found its way to your head, except all over my body. I vomit. It tastes of stomach bile and salt. This is the last taste I'll have in my mouth. This is what death tastes like. This is what life tastes like until it turns into death. I duck under the approaching wave, feel its energy rush over me. When I come up, I open my eyes. I don't know why. All I see is blackness. I wonder if I somehow had a gun or some way of instant painless death, would I take it? Or would I continue fighting, suffering, just for the sake of being alive? I do not look forward to the terror of my last breath, feeling my lungs ache, desperate for one more taste of oxygen. I've been there twice already, had a preview when I was sucked down into the whirlpool, wondering if I'd reach the surface in time. Will I cramp and drown? Or succumb to fatigue? Or... fuck. What the fuck was that? Something just brushed against my leg, something big moving through the water, something slick. The shark. I reach out in every direction, feeling for the rock, willing it to be there, willing the sensation I just felt to be anything but a prehistoric killing machine, to not be a giant mechanism of muscle and teeth built for hunting down much more able swimmers than me. Because sharks are built for death. Multiple rows of teeth, dead black eyes, brutally sinister. But the shark isn't evil. The shark is hungry. Whether or not I deserve what is coming, I am in his ocean. It doesn't matter if I am good, because I am also food. Am I good? As far as I can tell, it's not quite so simple as that. Sure, I did my best to treat people kindly, to act with integrity, to follow my self-made moral compass. But if I take a bird's eye view, I was far from perfect. All my life I have spent money on drugs, on pleasure, when I could have sent that money to some famine-stricken region of the world. Same with every luxury I've ever afforded myself. Because can a person really be good if they have the opportunity to save a life, but instead opt for an ounce of weed with a side of famine, or a fancy dinner with a side of disease? None of us are as good as we think. Evil can be complicated too. Take an obvious evil like racism. Most people can agree that if the devil exists, racism is one of his favorite toys. But let's imagine a racist, and I mean a real nasty type who says nigger 5 times before breakfast. But this man is a father, and he takes care of his kids. He loves and respects his wife. And besides a few dirty looks or nasty words, his racism is mainly self-insulated. On the other hand, you've got a hippie guy giving out free hugs and preaching love of all races, except he has 2 illegitimate children he never sees. So are they both shits? I mean, people are surprised to see a picture of Hitler petting his dog or interacting cheerfully with a child. Like just because he was an evil fucker, he must have spent all his free time kicking dogs and abusing kids. He was a human being. Humans are complicated. I am not good. I am not evil. I am going to die. The rest is just words. The shark. There it was again, on the other side this time. Maybe it's a dolphin, but who am I kidding? This isn't a dolphin kind of night. The sea is quarreling with the sky, both rough and rabid in their lashing out. The rocks are hard and unforgiving. The waves are relentless in their attempted murders. Dolphins are for frolicking in the sunshine. Sharks are for stormy nights shuttling the weak and weary to the refuge of death. I want to be wrong, but somehow I know. I know this is a shark. I know it will bite. I know I will die. After Alejandra's boyfriend had arrived, I was in a sort of an automatic state. The type of state like when you're debating whether or not to do something that you shouldn't do. Like call your dealer to get another bag or eat another damn cookie. And suddenly in the middle of debating back and forth without having made a conscious decision, you find yourself reaching for the desired object and there's no thinking involved. The brain seems to short circuit. I was concussed by grief and staggering towards the light. Except my stagger was a purposeful stride and my mind was as focused as it had been in weeks. The focus was singular, though. Return to the ocean. Become one with the waves and the currents. Become weightless and free. The ground beneath and the life around me felt alien, like things I didn't recognize. I had invested my entire world in the hope for Alejandra's heart. With the hope extinguished, I was left with nothing. I had a lyric that went, "I've been wandering and waiting for the first day of the rest of my life, collapsing to create an angel in the snow who I'll make my fair weather wife. I tried to tattoo a map to my heart, but eventually I ran out of skin. When the world ends, what do we call whatever is about to begin?" I had that same old feeling that I had been waiting for the turning point, the moment of truth, the woman who would excise my loneliness and carve it into love. But Alejandra was a fair weather lover who had vanished like an angel in the snow with the changing seasons. Except I didn't have the luxury of an entire season. Her heart seemed to change seasons like the sky changes colors. It must have been 1,000,000 years old. My catatonic reverie was interrupted by Tom's firm grip on my arm. "Hey." We sized each other up, trying to figure out just how serious and determined the other party was. This wasn't a show of pride or bravado, though. This was serious. This was life and death. Tom and I had a short but storied history of combat. Things had never ended well for him, and I had always ended up feeling bad after the confrontations, a sure indication I wasn't the stone-cold killer I sometimes imagined myself to be. I shook his hand off my arm, looked at him, knew he was acting from a place of love, knew that in that moment it didn't matter, worked hard to hold back tears, turned away and pressed on towards the ocean. Tom followed close behind. I knew I was making the same old mistake, moving for the sake of moving, for the sake of escape, not moving towards something but away from something, intent on increasing the distance from the last difficult moment with no regard for where I might end up. I had a lyric that went, "Lately I've been talking in my sleep, can't imagine what I'd have to say. Wake and find me walking in my sleep, running away from yesterday." I felt like a fool. Like any words I had to say would be foolish words since they came from a fool's mouth. But then in slumber, when dreams had unfettered access to the nooks and crannies where lost memories and busted hopes go to die, those dreams might tease out the tiny spark that hid away there. It's a cliche that the smallest spark can start the biggest fire. What is less cliche is an examination of how hard that spark is to maintain. Sure, a tiny fire can grow, but it can also burn out. A drop of water can extinguish the match that might light the fuse on your heart's desire. It may seem like a poetical fantasy, but I always had the idea that sleepwalking was about seeking out your dreams. Like maybe you were afraid in the light of day, but when the moon rose, casting its spotlight on the dream singing solo at center stage, the body was compelled to move, to act. Except in my case, the sleepwalking wasn't in search of a dream, but an escape of a nightmare. Tom wasn't letting me go easily, though. "If you're going in, then I'm going in too." I somehow didn't allow this to register, just kept striding forward. "I'm serious. If you're going in, then I am too." "Up to you," was all I had to offer in reply. A stock response, the kind of response you give when you're not listening and focused on the task at hand. I gritted my teeth and continued forward. Tom followed just off my shoulder. "It's going to be cold," he said. "Whatever." We continued on in silence. Soon we were in the water, our feet and ankles chilled in the cool surf. We were old hands at this, though. We knew we'd adjust to the temperature, especially once we were fighting the current. It was just a matter of continuing onwards. We entered the water at the northern cliff face with the current pulling hard towards the south, so we had a good 200 yards before we got bashed into the southern cliffs. Besides that constant looming threat, there was the riptide pulling us out to sea, interrupted only by the regular crash of the 10-foot-high waves, which gave us a moment of calm but swelling water in their wake, before the current took hold of us again. There was also the general chop of the ocean's surface, churned up by the strong winds, at least 20 miles per hour, enough to give the rain a nice slant and keep the water rough. Still, the swim out felt cool and good, refreshing, purposeful. I felt strong. The layers of sweat and sand, the sunburn, the hunger, all slipped off of me, left in the tide to wash upon some distant beach far across the world. I felt I was leaving Alejandra behind as well. Besides literally leaving her on the beach, I was leading my heart away from her, into the cleansing waters of a rough ocean when the wind is high and the tide is up to battle the surf just for the thrill of it. So out we swam, hell or high water be damned, churning our way out to sea, while fighting to stay close to the northern cliff face. The rain may have picked up. At least it didn't lessen any, and the wind kept the sea choppy and constantly coming up to slap me in the face, instead of allowing me to glide smoothly along the surface. We did our best to duck under waves, a trick we had learned from watching the surfers in our youth, and which worked to make the swim out much more manageable than if we'd been getting thrashed every time a wave came by. After a good long while, Tom yelled, "How much further do you want to go?" I turned around and swam on my back so that I could see him. "Turn back if you want to," I shouted. "Not gonna happen." I turned around and continued out into the ocean. We had nearly cleared the end of the cliffs, would do so shortly, and would be out in the open sea. I felt a flutter of fear at the sheer size of it, the churning endless blackness of it, big enough to swallow me and forget about it before the sun rose. Somehow the great unknown roiling mass of ocean had become a stand-in for Alejandra's heart. It seemed equally infinite, equally beautiful, equally sensuous, and equally deadly. I had a lyric that went, "A man made of wax and wood fell in love with a woman made of fire, and he didn't mind becoming a drifting of smoke to follow his heart's desire." That was me, daring Alejandra's heart to reduce me to nothing, blood to steam, bone to ash. I would fight fire with gasoline and douse myself with it as well, just for good measure. I didn't want to leave any doubt that I was unafraid of destruction, annihilation, if it was in the cause of love. The sea was a rearing giant. It was every windmill I'd ever passed by thinking better of the charge. It was a smorgasbord of contact and conflict crashing around me, swirling beneath me, falling out of the sky above me, and the clouds were dark and low, and they'd light up like a stage set every time the lightning crashed. And the lightning made the sky flash and flicker in pieces and all at once. And the thunder rolled from a distant impact, tossed across the waves like a manic cannonball, skittering and skidding in every direction. But I was reclaiming my manhood. I was flexing my broken heart, turning the wet rag torn through and limp into the muscle meant for pumping blood it was built to be. I was damming the cracks in the dike and commanding the water to flow. I was the water. And at the same time I was a blade. I was a prehistoric fish built for cutting, form-eating function, slicing through the vast everything of it all. Moses had nothing on me, because in my mind, I was still Achilles. The immensity of emotions I felt through this ordeal is going to be difficult to get across. The size of the ocean might as well be infinite when you're flailing around for a handhold and finding only more of the great killing mass waiting to slip through your fingers until you slip beneath its surface. But in the moment I still felt like the ocean was providing me grips to pull myself forward, away from the source of my latest toppled passions. No matter how far I swam, no matter how much distance I put between myself and Alejandra's love for another, I felt more regrets and echoes of failure welling up within me. I don't know if it happens to you, but something that happens to me pretty regularly is that I'll go into a negative mindset, just feeling bad about the future and about the choices I've made. And these negative memories will start popping up in my head unbidden, just like a conveyor belt that stretches into the darkest parts of my past, bringing to the front the times I was humiliated, the times I failed, the times I lied, the times I was cruel to people. And I'm battered by this stream of broke-ass experiences, and it just feels like the sky is raining shit and it's my job to shovel it. But pulling out into the water, stroking through the great swelling organism of the ocean, I could feel things falling off me, being pulled away into the currents, somehow dissolving into nothing, if only by virtue of the ocean's limitless capacity. I was proving something to myself, believing too much in my own metaphor. Endless roiling sea as endless roiling love. I had a lyric that went, "I broke my back for an anarchist angel. I bit my tongue for a government ghost. I tried to ride a wave but only sweated blood into the sea until it swallowed the coast. And I can't remember the last fight I won, but I remember every time I ran. I will be the last man standing. I will be Omega Man." I wanted to avenge all of the humiliations that reared their heads when the darkness caught up with me. And the only way to do that was to outlast them all. When love had brought the world to its knees, when heartbreak became a universal religion, I would emerge from the ocean and I would stand tall. Perhaps I wouldn't fight the good fight. Perhaps I would not be the man I believed I could be. But if I could outlast this heartache, I could survive. So I swam. And I swam, and I swam. My muscles ached, and I swam. My lungs heaved, and I swam. Through the waves and rain and thunder I swam, out to sea, out towards the setting sun. I think I believed I might reach it if I pulled far enough. And then reality crashed down upon me. I was suddenly exhausted. I had pushed myself to the limit in some foolhardy gambit to empty the tank for the sake of who knows what. I had allowed myself to exist purely in metaphor, disregarding the risks of driving into the deep heart of the ocean without a means of escaping, short of clawing my way out on the back of guts and determination, and probably a fair amount of luck. Now here I was in the deepest of waters, currents pulling me deeper, water and wind cold and driving, my body suddenly very soft and pink, squishy and prodded by the ocean, a flimsy thing drifting, not a gear with the torque for turning, the ability to churn through water like I was born to it. Tom looked very worried. I was pale in the dim moonlight with the post-workout chill. All adrenaline and warmth seemed to have drained from my body. "Are you gonna be okay, man? We're a long way out." Yeah, you're gonna be okay? Just need to rest a bit." But the currents didn't think much of my need to rest. So while I floated, doing just enough to keep my head above the surface, the currents pulled us steadily deeper and towards the opposing cliff face. Tom stayed with me, treading water out in the giant engulfing blackness. He watched the opposing cliff face get closer. We were well out of our little inlet and in open ocean, so there was no telling if we'd even be able to gain access to our little harbor, much less make it all the way to the shore without having a run-in with the cliff walls. But Tom waited while my heart slowly calmed, while the lactic acid drained from my muscles and I got back to feeling like a functional human machine. The ocean was beautiful. There was a serenity in its steady swelling violence, and its ability to fold itself over you 1,000 times and still remain infinite. Like its power might toss you around, but it would always provide a safe landing, if only to be able to toss you again. It was like a sensory deprivation tank for your soul, like you could have whispered your secrets out across the surface, and they only would have traveled to safe places, or would have wandered forever, waiting for the moment when they were needed to soothe some other wounded vagabond. But from another angle, it was terror taken form, churning around you, waiting to swallow you, acting in every respect like it's only a matter of time. I saw this when I saw the ocean through Tom's eyes. He wasn't having a zen moment. He was very much conscious of the foolhardiness of our night swim. He didn't see that my heart was the target of my kamikaze trip, and somehow I could only be healed by teasing death, daring that black veil to stop my blood and instead turn me into another piece of the drifting whole. Tom looked worried. "Are you ready to head back in?" I wasn't. "We're drifting, you know." I knew, but I think I was in a state of denial. Like having gotten myself into this situation I now would refuse to engage in, somehow it might end up just going away. I just wanted to sleep. It wasn't that I wanted to die. The ocean, as scary as it was, still wasn't quite registering as deadly. It was still a thing I played in as a child, in which I could challenge and overcome, because I had done so many times before. It would only be a matter of turning and starting to pull towards shore, and surely everything would fall into place. The ocean suddenly felt very big. I could feel it moving around me with a persistence and power that I hadn't to that point grasped. The ocean would provide no timeouts or breaks, no mercy or second chances. I was in this now, and I was going to have to get myself out. We were drifting towards the opposite cliff. The longer I rested, the closer we got. "How far out are we?" I sincerely wanted to know. "Too far, dude. We should head back." "But how far do you think?" "I don't know, man. Maybe 1,000 yards, maybe 2,000, maybe 500. Tom was edging back towards shore. "You coming, man?" Tom was half treading water, half stroking towards shore. He seemed very intent on studying the current as it pulled at us. He didn't look pleased. "This current is really going, man." "Fucking A." "So, you ready to head in?" I couldn't think of any reason not to. I had backed myself into a corner, and now I had to fight my way out of it. Out in the ocean there, at the end of my endurance, knowing that I was standing on death's doorstep, peeking into the front room and was about to flee, and death would give chase and death would not tire. Well, I was tired already. The thunder and lightning sprung from the sky in a spectacular burst, like nothing I'd ever seen before. Like all the lightning had laid in wait and synchronized and then exploded forth, lighting the entire sky momentarily. And as a wave swell lifted me, I saw the entire horizon lit up, and for the first time could differentiate between the distant sea and sky. It made me think of a lyric. The sky is not the end, the sky is only the beginning. I think the just mind-bogglingly massive size of the ocean is what brought it on. The feeling of just being part of and immersed in this incredible natural force. It made one feel small. And then to look up at the sky and imagine the heavens beyond the atmosphere. Of inching up to the edge of the atmosphere and peering out, compounded the feeling even that much more. Because I think that's what the lyric was about in the end. Everyone uses the metaphor of wanting to fly or touch the sky or some such variation, but it's a rare poet who takes his metaphor beyond the sky. That was where I wanted to be, out into the infinite, intergalactic muses. So I had this lyric in my head and it led me to the rest of the verse. The sky is not the end, the sky is only the beginning, where emptiness flows thick as oxygen is thinning. So hold your bated breath for thunderclouds baptizing. I ride the lightning to horizon. I liked the idea of being baptized in thunderclouds and decided I had been born anew in the mighty lightning crash that had just lit the sky, and I would ride that lightning to the horizon and beyond. There was another lyric from that song that I liked a lot and felt was right in line with my thinking in that moment. It was the opening lines of the song. Would I disappear forever if I knew you'd notice? Become the farthest from you since I'll never be the closest. That was a kind of desperation for Alejandra, I felt. The desire to just be something to her, to be anything. Somehow seeing it in these terms, seeing things through the lens of a past poetic attempt, showed me that it was not worth it to sacrifice so much for so little effect. To change one's life immensely and permanently just to change some woman's mind who wouldn't give you another thought. It wasn't like I was suddenly over Alejandra. Far from it. Just that I could suddenly see that there was life in the distance. As long as there was a pulse in my heart, there was the potential for a future sunrise on a future day to light the way back to beauty and wonder. Even if now beauty and wonder were spelled A-L-E-J-A-N-D-R-A. I turned to Tom, who had been treading water impatiently while my mind raced and body rested, and drifted in the current. I quoted from the chorus of the song. The path of least resistance doesn't mean there's no resistance. It just means there's less than the rest. What's that supposed to mean? It means I don't want to disappear. So you ready to head in? Fucking A. Finally. We drifted like halfway across. We're gonna have to swim at an angle. He turned toward shore and began stroking his way in. I followed behind him. Distance soon opened up between us. Tom didn't realize quite how much. By the time he realized I wasn't behind him, I had already been forced to stop and rest and had once again been subject to the pull of the current. I just didn't have anything left in the tank. Tom had just come off a season of organized basketball with daily practices keeping him in tip-top shape. I, on the other hand, had been smoking weed like I was an Olympic hopeful going for gold and bong rips. My body was dog shit and ached just walking up a flight of stairs. So this marathon swim wasn't exactly agreeing with me. For all my good intentions, the mind was willing, but the flesh was weak as weak can be. Everything felt like jelly, and I was having great trouble activating any kind of second or maybe third wind. I had managed to follow Tom back in out of the open ocean, probably about 500 yards, but we had been swimming against the current the entire time, currents pulling us both out to sea and towards the opposing cliff face, so we had probably swam the equivalent of more like 1,000 or so yards. Now that we were back in our little harbor, we had the very real danger of the cliffward currents to deal with. While Tom had managed to angle his way against these currents and steer well clear of the cliff face, I wasn't so fortunate. I kept moving and kept churning, but I just wasn't making any progress. In fact, if anything, I was getting pulled back out to sea, and was without a doubt getting pulled towards the opposing cliff face. I was fading. I gathered my courage and all the guts I had left and made what in my mind would be my one last sprint for shore. I forgot all about the cliffward current and let it pull me as it would. I only had eyes for the shore and made for it like a straight shot. I figured that destiny had my back and I'd probably reach the beach just a few feet before I would have hit the cliff face. I was past the point of lactic acid buildup and muscle ache. It was like if you ever try to keep your eyes open without blinking, eventually they'll start watering and they won't really hurt anymore. It's not easy, but with enough willpower, it's possible. I had mentally broken through the pain barrier and was living in a post-pain universe. Everything hurt, but it was a good hurt. It was a hurt to be consumed as fuel and turned into more hurt in a self-consuming perpetual motion machine. Still, the will is only capable of so much. I was becoming spastic. I was flailing, but I was still going. And then I cramped. It was my hamstring. I took a gulp of air and let myself sink a bit as I pulled on my right foot, trying to straighten my leg out. No dice. I flailed upwards and grabbed another gulp of air, went back to work wrestling with my leg, this time managing to pull it straight. I floated on my back, gulping air, holding the leg straight. When I lifted my head to assess my location and situation, I found the currents had not been kind. I was now almost as far out as I had been when I had begun the sprint that had consumed the final fumes in my tank, and I was a lot closer to the cliff face. By this point, I was about 100 yards from shore and 20 yards from the cliff face. Not a comfortable distance by any means, but not quite an imminent peril yet. The problem was that directly between me and the shore there was this large island of rock sticking up out of the water. At the rate I was going, I'd have to shoot the gap between the rock island and the cliff face, which was about a 20-yard gap. The other option was to wrestle against the current and go around the opposite side of the rock island, but I honestly didn't feel like I had it in me. And here's where the dumbness came in. I actually thought I might be able to get some relief from the ocean's clutches there, like it would be a sort of breakwater for the current, or maybe even allow me to grab a hold of something and catch some rest. Shit, maybe I'd even be able to climb up out of the water. There was no such luck. As it was, I managed to reach the rock island without taking any damage, but there just wasn't anywhere I could get a good hold of it. I was cold and weak, and the handholds were few and far between, and the sea was rough. There was no chance of climbing up out of the water, which I discovered quickly, but I was still holding out hope that there'd be a place I could hang on and float and rest when the first wave hit. Being that close to the cliff face when the wave hit was quite a wake-up call. In the daylight, I'd seen the waves crashing against the cliffs from a distance, seen the ocean spray explode upward 100 feet in the air, but I hadn't really gotten a true idea of it until I'd felt the wave rush over me and smash the cliff so close by. While I managed to keep from getting bashed into the cliff face, I was pulled off the rock, and before I knew it, I was underwater, my hands badly scraped up from where they'd been pulled from their anchors. Luckily, I had managed to grab a gulp of air on the way down. I'd been thrashed by waves many times in my childhood, so I knew to just keep my cool and hold my breath and not panic. Let the wave pass, then recover and get to the surface. This lesson had been learned after a few memorable snootfuls of water as a little kid. So I went down, felt the violent turbulence of the water around me, and felt the energy fading out, the current slowing. I swam for the surface, and as I came up, I could see the remnants of a whirlpool disappearing into the currents. This was a new twist. It used to be that with every wave that came, I got a little push towards shore. Now every wave that came summoned this damn whirlpool, and I was stuck in it. As soon as the energy from the wave had passed and the whirlpool had faded to nothing, I made a break for shore, knowing that I had to get enough distance between myself and the epicenter before... Too late. As I was clawing my way towards shore, the next wave hit and sucked me right back into the whirlpool, which was so strong I felt like someone had grabbed me by my belt and just pulled me backwards through the water. There was no swimming against it. One was just pulled into the whirlpool and eventually sucked under. It seemed I was stuck. This wasn't good. As far as I knew, the waves went all night. That meant the whirlpool would go all night. That meant I was in trouble. I was exhausted and my fatigue was only growing. I was surely dehydrated and had been on meager rations for several days, not to mention the copious amounts of ganja I had been smoking. I was starting to feel a chill, which I knew would only get worse. I needed to figure a way out of this predicament, needed to concentrate. Instead, my mind wandered. A lyric from one of my songs popped into my head, playing on repeat. Black hole attraction activated. She shakes her head, chaos theory demonstrated. 1,000 shadows clasping hands in prayer. She's the girl with midnight hidden in her hair. The whirlpool may as well have been a black hole for how readily help was available. The song could have been written about Alejandra, but she wasn't the only black-haired beauty to cross my path. The girl with midnight in her hair wasn't a girl at all. She was a woman who was a dear friend to me, until the moment she wasn't, and she just so happened to provide me with my first taste of that sweet, sweet Chiba.